last chapter, like, smoked me pretty bad, so
Okay.
everything from there.
So game theory.
No, so not the one due tonight, but the one prior. So that was like,
Oh, the one prior.
was
So
that monopolistic competition.
monopolistic competition. Okay. Let's go through that. Anything in particular? Like, do you have a particular question? Do you have a particular concept that was really rough? Or
I thought I understood it really well, but I did poorly on the homework.
okay.
And to be honest, I haven't had a chance to go back through yet, so I can check right now.
Sure. If you could, that would actually be oh shoot.
Oh.
Because whole chapter. So. So it's not letting me get into the book on this computer. No. Usually lets me. So if you could give me like a specific example, that'd be awesome.
So I'm going to be a minute if you want to jump into something else.
Sure. Do you guys have anything else you want to go over? Any questions?
So the Herfindahl index,
Okay.
but it's all the firms, correct? It's not just top four like C4 is.
Yeah, it's all okay. Is listed. So would you guys want to do a quick example of that?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it. So Herfindahl index. So what does the Herfindahl index measure exactly?
It's something is
Oligopoly.
oligopoly.
It's a hard word. Yeah, so pretty much what the Herfindahl index measures is it measures how concentrated an industry is, right? So it measures how much power the top firms have. And the C4 also does that, but it's not as effective in many ways. So Herfindahl index, the formula is right over here, right? So what the formula is we take the percentage, which is the market share, right, of the leading firm, so the firm with the most, and you square it plus the market share of second leading firm, square it, and you go on like that. So let's do a quick example. So let's say that we're talking about microprocessors. And let's say Intel has a 82% market share. And then AMD has 10%, Samsung has 3%, and then I don't even know if they make microprocessor, but I don't even think I spelled that right. But let's say Huawei or whatever has 2%. So go ahead and calculate the Herfindahl index for this industry.
$6,837.
6,837. Okay. So, looking at that, what's the maximum possible score you could get for Herfindahl index?
10,000.
10,000, right? Because if you plug in 100% into this one, so it means that there's just one firm, it's a perfect monopoly, right? Or a pure monopoly. Then you would get 10,000. So 10,000 means that it's very, very concentrated. So the closer you are to 10,000, the more concentrated. So how is this market pretty concentrated?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's up there. This is definitely an oligopoly, right? And then, do you guys want to do some C4 examples too?
Yes.
Okay. So C4 is a little bit easier. It's just the sum of the four leading firms. Okay. So let's say. What was that? So I'm going to do another firm. Just call it a firm. let's say that they have an additional 3%, okay? Do me a favor and calculate the C4 for this industry, okay? Or the four firm concentration ratio. Do me a favor, go ahead and do that. Whoever gets the first, shout out.
97.
97, right?
98.
Wait, does that say?
It should be 98.
Should be 98.
It should be 98.
Yeah.
Does that make sense as to why?
Wait,
2
why
plus
98?
10 plus 3 plus 3.
Oh, because they're not in order.
Because you're going to take the top 4 firms, right?
Yeah.
So the 4 firm concentration ratio is the amount of market share that the top 4 firms in the industry have. Okay, so you'll just take the 4 that are the highest and we'll add them up. Okay, so let's try something now.
There was a question on the homework that was pretty confusing to me. It was
Sure.
like saying the whole 4 firm Herfindahl index thing or whatever, or I don't know, it was like 4 firm percentage split equally between like 5 firms.
Yeah, that confused me too.
You know,
I was like,
it was-
I
So
do
it was
not know how to
like,
start.
I remember that one, it was like, there's 4 firms, do the top 4 for a 5 firm, and then it gave you that the top 4 was 80%, so you just have to assume that the 5th firm is 20% of the whole, so it equals 100%. I don't remember what I got.
I think I just guessed and put like 1,600.
If one of you guys wants to find the question, I can look at it, but it doesn't sound like something to be on the exam, but if you want to find it, we can go a little bit.
That's cool.
Okay, so but I'm going to change this one up a little bit real quick, just for a proof of concept or something, okay? So what was the original one? We got 98, right?
Yes.
98. Okay, so let's do a quick change here. Let's say that this firm goes out of business and a firm picks up all of their market share. So all of a sudden this jumps to 5%. Go ahead and calculate the C4 now.
It should be 100.
Yeah.
It's 100, right? So even though it's not a pure monopoly, we still have a C4 of 100. Why is that?
Because there's only 4 firms.
Right, there's only 4 firms, and all 4 of them comprise the entire market, right? There's nobody else who's competing in this market, so it's very concentrated. But you could split this up any way you wanted to, right? They could each have 25%, one of them could have 100%. By looking at this number, you can't tell just how concentrated it is, can you? Within the 4 firms. You just know that there's 4 firms that control the whole thing. So that's why the Herfindahl index is so important, is because if you go ahead and calculate the Herfindahl index of this market right now, just run it again. Lots of practice. It'll help in the long run, I promise.
6,858.
858?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got that. And we already know if this, so that's with the C4 of 100, right? If Intel became a pure monopoly and had 100, what would the C4 be now? It would still be 100. But what would the Herfindahl index be now?
10,000.
10,000, exactly. So, does that make sense to everybody? Is everybody okay with Herfindahl index C4? Yeah.
I have another question. So
Yeah.
the Herfindahl index tells us how concentrated
Right.
the market is.
Right.
The C4 tells us what the market is, like what type of market it is, correct?
Right.
So can we go over that, like what
Sure.
it needs to be less than to be monopolistic competition
Yeah.
or that?
The only thing you really need to remember, this is all I have in my notes, is if the C4 is less than 40, it's considered monopolistic competition.
Okay.
Okay? And if it's greater than 40, then it is an oligopoly.
Okay.
What if it's 40?
No, the book doesn't say. So it's right on the border. It's on thin ice. What was that?
So it's, if it's 40, well, it won't be 40, like,
I don't believe so. I actually was curious about that because when I was reading through the book, I noticed that it says greater than and less than. It doesn't have an equal to on either of them. So I'm assuming you probably won't get an example where it's exactly 40.
Unless he's feeling really bad.
Yeah, unless he's really just looking to hurt you guys. And if that does happen, if there's a question like that on the test, I'll talk to him and tell him that I told him that it wouldn't be there, and I'll probably get in trouble. But you won't. So
Awesome.
you'll be fine. Is everybody okay with this? With Herfindahl index, C4, you would feel okay calculating these. You know what it means if you see one. Okay, cool.
So there's a question on my homework that said so a higher Herfindahl index, does it represent more power in the market? That's the
Yes.
wording that he used.
Yes. Because if you think about it, the more concentrated a market is, the more powerful those firms are. So if you are, in the t-shirt market, how powerful are you in terms of how much you can set prices?
Myself, not really.
Yeah, because you can't set prices super, super high because you've got a bunch of competitors that people will just buy those instead.
Yeah.
Right? But if you are Intel, right, and you own 90% market share, how much power do you have over price?
Okay, yeah.
A pretty significant amount, right? Because you've only got one competitor. You don't have complete control over price because you're not an absolute monopoly. But you have significant control over price.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah.
For those of you who weren't here last time, I just want to throw this up here. Who wasn't here last time? Could you raise your hand real quick for me? Okay, so for all of you all, I would strongly recommend that you memorize this chart. Or if not memorize, just make sure you understand it well enough, you are comfortable with it, you understand the order behind it. If you don't, take a picture of it, or if you are watching online, it's found on page 203 of your book. It has the different market models. There will be a lot of questions, or at least when I took this class in my final, there were a lot of questions that had to do with these. So just knowing the different types, knowing
You
these
said
different,
it's
knowing
page
these different
203?
203, yeah. So just knowing these different models, knowing what order they go in. So just looking at this, who can tell me which side is more concentrated and has the most, and has the least firms, and which side is least concentrated?
Least firm is a ride.
Right. So pure monopoly, you got one firm. Oligopoly, you got a few. Monopolist competition, you got many. And pure competition, you got very large numbers. So just familiarize yourself with these market models and know their attributes. And that will probably answer you. If I had to place money on it, I would say that there will be probably 15 questions that will be something to do with this. 10 to 15. So really good to know.
How many questions are on the plan?
65, yeah. Because if you think about it, of the last, so show you guys this. So there are 4 of the last 5 chapters that are pretty much this chart, right? 4 of the last 5 chapters are either pure monopoly, oligopoly, monopolistic competition, pure competition. And this is pretty much the information boiled down to its simplest form. So please memorize that. Okay.
What would be a question related to that chart?
So, like a good example would be something along the lines of, in an oligopoly, what amount of price control would a firm have? You would say, and one of the answers would be, oh, they have some control over price.
Limited?
Yeah. Or you could say, or another thing would be, they don't have unlimited control. A monopoly does. Or what kind of barriers to entry are there in monopolistic competition? What type of product, if you're seeing a standardized product being sold by a very large number of firms, what type of market model is that? There will be a lot of conceptual questions that will kind of go along with this. So I would hit that really, really hard. And then also there will be questions comparing. Like there's one on the mock exam, we can run through it real quick. There will be questions comparing the, so like this one, 23. So in an oligopoly, and then it compares the different models, right? So it says the total output produced in the market is higher than the total output we produce if it were monopoly or perfectly competitive, and you'll have to see, all right, which one of these is true. So will you guys want to run through this one real quick? Okay. Just walk through and tell me if anybody can explain to me what the answer is and can articulate why.
Is it B?
I believe so. Yeah, it is B. Can you explain to me why?
Because B says the total output produced in the market is higher than the total output that would be produced in the market where, if the market were a monopoly, or lower than the total output that would be produced if the market were perfectly competitive. So basically, a monopoly is probably going to be producing the least amount. So it's like the farthest on the right side. They just don't produce the optimum, like the optimal amount that is necessarily for society, like that they want.
Right.
So they have the least amount. Then oligopoly, they're going to be producing more, but still not as much as a perfectly competitive monopoly or a perfect competition or a, what's the other one?
Oligopoly.
Yeah.
Right. Good job. So a really easy way to think about this one is he was 100% right, but the way I like to think about it is, all right, so if Monopoly has perfect price control, they can produce fewer units and sell them at a higher price, and they can make the same profit, right? Or another way to think about it is there's fewer people selling, there's fewer firms selling, so fewer firms, less people making it, less output. Does that make sense? So the more concentrated the market, the less the output. So the fewer firms selling, the fewer units being produced. Does that make sense to everybody? So this is the type of question you should expect to see quite a few on in the exam that will have to do with that chart I just showed you. Does anybody have a hard time understanding any of the market models in particular? Or is there anything that you would like to go over when it comes to market models? It's 4 chapters, kind of really materials. Yeah.
One of the questions in today's homework
Okay.
said something on that monopolistic competition and monopolies have some similarities, but it seems like they're completely different. What are some of the similarities?
So,
Because the chart doesn't seem like there's very much. Besides maybe no profit.
So I think that's like the beginning of chapter 12. It says like monopoly and a competitive monopoly, right? That's what you're asking.
Monopolistic competition.
Competition. So it's like the very beginning of like 12.1, I think. So this is like there's a lot of sellers, and then there's product differentiation, and then there's what's the third thing?
barriers to entry,
Barriers to entry, right?
control
So
over price.
So the product differentiation was unique to a monopoly, and then the other two were unique to competition.
So I think that might be a kind of a misleading, not what you said, but I'm saying like what the book said initially might be a little bit misleading because they are similar when compared to pure competition.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because if you're looking at a monopoly and monopolistic competition as compared to pure competition, when you all of a sudden move over to monopolistic competition, there is some barriers to entry, right? There is some very, very limited control over price. But in pure competition, there's none at all, right? So there are similarities, but I would kind of throw, I don't want to say throw that concept out,
Yeah.
but I would realize that when you're talking about monopolistic competition in reference to pure competition, there are similarities to monopoly, but they are pretty far apart on that spectrum.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Okay. So, something I want to go over real quick. We'll go over economies of scale, diseconomies of scale. You guys okay with that?
Mhm.
All right, cool. So, let's talk about economies of scale. So, who can tell me what shape the average total cost curve is?
You.
It's a new.
Right, it's a U shape. Why is that?
Economies of
Economies of
Cost
scale.
is going down as
Right.
you go.
Right. No,
As
you're
more
100%.
units you produce.
Yeah, you're
And then-
100% right.
as you keep producing, then it kind of cost goes up again.
Exactly. Okay, so did you guys hear what you said? So what does it mean to scale? What does it mean in business? What does it mean to scale a company? Right, to grow.
Sorry, I can't search the web on Apple.
That's annoying. Yeah, you're 100% right. So it means to grow, right? You're producing more output, you're selling more units. So what this is looking at, because right down here we have, this is quantity, right? So as we produce more, what is happening to our cost? So this region that's downsloping here, all the way to here, is called economies of scale, or an economy of scale. The reason for that is that it means as we scale, as we get bigger, it's economic for our company, right? It's costing us less money to produce more units. And likewise, on this other side, as costs are going up, it's a diseconomy of scale. Because the more we produce, the more our costs are going up. Does that make sense? Okay, what is this point down here at the bottom called?
Efficiency, constant return.
Constant returns to scale or efficient scale. So it's both, actually. So this point down here is constant returns / efficient scale. And if we were to zoom in really, really close onto this line, pretty much what you would see, right, is it would be sloped, and then all of a sudden you would have an area where it was sort of flat. That's really horrible. But this whole area where it would be flat, that's called constant returns to scale, right? It means that as you're scaling with each additional unit, your costs are staying the same for like 1, 2, maybe 3 units, and all of a sudden it starts going back up. Does that make sense? Okay. Any questions on this? So this would be a good thing to kind of hammer into your head. So if you see a graph and it says, section this of the graph would represent what, or if you were to see a chart, right, and you had average total cost, and it were to say, all right, between this and this, what is going on? Is there an economy of scale, a diseconomy of scale? That would probably be good to know. All right, and then I'll do one more thing on economies of scale real quick. So let's say we're comparing, let's say you get a question that looks like this. That gives you 2 average total cost curves. And one of them looks like this. And one of them looks like this. And it tells you, all right, tell me which one of these is for a monopoly and which one of these is for a pure competition. Can anybody tell just by looking at this? Yeah.
The right side's probably a pure competition, and the left is probably a monopoly.
Why is that? Can you explain it? It's actually not correct, but can you give me your thought behind it?
My logic is, okay, the costs are really high at first for a monopoly because they have all this production, and then once they start producing, the cost goes down because they're producing more. Well, maybe yeah, that's fair. So they're producing less, so it's the left side. And the right side, they're producing more, and then the more they produce, the more their cost goes up.
That's like, yeah, you're on a really, really good track.
Okay, cool.
So, I mean, my graphs aren't to scale, so it's hard to see, but these actually start at the same point, right? But with this one, this would be the competitive market. And the way you can think of that, the reason why you can think of that is because think of barriers to entry, right? If you were trying to get into a really concentrated market, like airplanes, right? You want to start your own airplane company. How easy would that be?
Difficult.
Yeah, how much money would you need just to get into that?
Money, there's lots of barriers to entry, government,
Right. You have to apply for stuff with the FAA. You have to hire a bunch of engineers. It's going to take billions and billions of dollars to start your own airplane company, right? So what that means is that, all right, your cost of your first unit is pretty high. And also, as you keep producing, it takes a while, right? Like, your costs are going to stay pretty high for a long time. Whereas over here, you can scale pretty quickly. Does that make sense? Your cost will drop quick.
Buy some seeds.
Right. And then, so this would be, so if you guys see a question like that, just kind of think of it. I don't know if any of you guys like my stupid memory tricks, but the one I use for this one is this one that is steeper, looks more like a C, competition. The one that's longer doesn't. So the one that looks more like a C is for competition. If any of you guys like that, feel free to use it. If not, I totally understand. Okay, questions on that one? You okay? Awesome. All right, any other questions on economies of scale? You guys okay?
So would you say a permanent monopoly has a larger economies of scale then?
So the economy of scale, it takes longer to reach efficient returns to scale.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, let's do some stuff from the mock exam. There's a few that I think will be particularly beneficial, and one of them is this chart. So, do any of you guys feel a little bit lost with all these different curves and all these different costs? Is that throwing anybody off? Do you guys want to go over anything particular with that? Yeah.
The only thing that I'm like slightly like confused on is just like average variable cost and average total cost, like kind of the main difference between the two and the importance of the two.
Okay, yeah, sure. Let's go over that. So, I guess before we get into that, let's get into kind of the numbers that those come from, right? So let's go into total cost and variable cost, right? So what is like a good definition for total cost? Pretty straightforward.
Fixed cost plus variable cost.
Yeah, good job. So it's your fixed cost plus your variable cost. Total cost, it's your total cost. Very obvious, right? It's the total of all of your expenses, okay? So then what's a good definition for your fixed cost?
It's a cost.
To pay no matter how many units.
Right, exactly. So this is the amount of money you have to pay regardless of how much you produce, right? So the one I really like to think of with this one is imagine you own like a restaurant or something, right? No matter what, you are going to have to pay your rent, right? You have to pay your rent for whatever real estate you got. It doesn't matter if you shut down the business. It doesn't matter if you aren't open on a day, or for a whole month. You're paying the rent for that month because you're under contract to pay it. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, variable cost. What's a good definition for variable cost?
How much it costs to produce a certain amount of output.
Right. So your variable cost is the cost that is changing with your output, right? So this would be, let's go back to the restaurant example. This would be, all right, if we're serving 89 people a day and we're serving 89 meals, then we have to pay for all the food that goes into that, the service. But then if we're only serving 50 people, it changes, right? That cost is changing because you don't have to buy as much food, you don't have to pay as many waiters, as many chefs. So variable cost is your cost that changes with your output. Okay? Is everybody okay with this? All right. So
Can we add one more? Marginal cost?
yeah, good idea. So marginal cost. So what is, I don't know if any of you guys remember this, but what is my rule that I always talk about with the word marginal in economics? What does it mean?
One more. Yeah.
Right, with one additional unit. So marginal always means with one additional unit. So if it's marginal benefit, it's the benefit you get from one additional unit. If it's marginal revenue, it's the benefit you get from it's the revenue you get from selling an additional unit. Marginal cost then would be
Much more cost to produce that.
exactly the additional cost associated with producing one more unit.
It's from the total cost, right?
Right. So if any of you guys like formulas for things to help you remember it, some people do. The idea that you can think of it like mathematically would be your total cost at the one that you're looking for, so we'll say that that's x, minus your total cost at x minus 1. So that's like a mathematical way to think of it. It just means that if it's asking you to find the x unit, so let's say it's the 5th unit, you would take the total cost of the 5th unit minus the cost of the 4th unit, and that's your marginal cost for the 5th unit. That's it.
Pretty easy.
Yeah, not bad. So if this throws you off, forget it. Okay, any other questions on this? We're good? Okay, so then with these three, so we'll use our little so we've got some cool little formulas to remember, right? So we know that total cost is your fixed cost plus your variable cost, right? Everybody's okay with that? So then there are 3 other numbers that are usually included on these charts. What are they?
Average total.
Average. They're just the averages, right? So all that these are is your average total cost is your total cost divided by your quantity. So quantity would be what? What does quantity mean?
How many you're producing?
Right, how many you're producing. So all you're doing is you're taking your total cost number and you're dividing it by how many units of output you have. Okay? And it's the same thing for variable cost, and it's the same thing for fixed cost. So really, when you guys are looking at these, all the math behind this is really simple, right? If you're solving a chart like this, everything you're going to be doing is either addition and subtraction with this formula right here, or you're going to be doing some division with these. Okay. So that being said, let's go through and let's answer some of these questions on the review. Okay. Let's do 1 through 4. Okay. Does somebody want to volunteer to run through number 1?
I'll go ahead and do it.
Okay.
So on number 1, because the first quantity on the board gives you the total cost and the variable cost, you can figure out the fixed cost, that's the only one you're missing. So you just do total cost minus variable cost, and that's going to be 25.
Right, so you just do 38 minus 13, it gives you 25. Okay, and then once you have the fixed cost, is that just the fixed cost for that unit?
No, it's very low.
No, right? It's fixed, it doesn't change. So you can just kind of drag and drop that all the way down here. So your fixed cost is always going to be 25. Does that make sense to everyone?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. So then number 2, what is the average variable cost of producing 3 gigaplots at Jimmy's factory? Who has a volunteer? Do I have a volunteer for that one? Go for it.
For 3, first you want to find out the variable cost, which is 30 minus 25.
Right.
So that's 45.
Yeah.
And then 45 divided by 3, which is 15, because it's 3 things being produced.
That is correct. Does everybody follow that? If not, I'm going to do it anyway. So what he was saying is, all right, so now that we figured out our fixed cost, we know it's 25. Then to figure out our variable cost, we know that fixed cost plus variable cost equals our total cost. So we subtract 25 from 70, it gives us 45. And since we're not looking for variable cost, we're looking for average variable cost, we divide it by the units, which is 3. That gives you 15. You guys all right? Okay, next one, number 3. What is the average total cost of producing 6 gigaplots? Who can help me out with that one? Shoot, go for it.
So on that one, I just took the total. Okay, so variable cost is 108. We know the fixed cost is 25. And so the total cost is 133. And then just divide that by 6.
Right.
That's 22.17.
Good job. 17. Yep. Okay, so does that make sense to everybody? Did anybody get lost on that one? All right. So now let's do number 4. What is the marginal cost of the 4th gigaplot? How do you solve that one? Go for it.
You're going to be minusing the third one from, sorry, is it the 4th? Yeah. Yeah, so the third one from the 4th of total cost. So it's going to be 89 minus 70, which is 19.
That should be right. Yep. All right. Good job. Did that make sense to everybody? So when you're looking at marginal costs, always look at total cost, right? Because you're just looking at the costs associated with the next unit. So for the 4th unit, you're going to look here, and then you'll figure this out by going over here, which is, I think you said it was 89, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so 89 minus 70, that is your marginal cost. Is everybody okay with that? Do you guys feel like you could fill out this whole table?
Yes.
Given enough time? All right, cool. Any other questions on this? Okay, anybody lost on this concept? Okay, cool.
Well, it's probably not important, but
It probably is.
on the marginal cost, why is it 0 for 1 unit? Wouldn't it be the amount of the total cost?
You know, that is a good question. I think they don't do it because marginal means with 1 additional unit. That's like the definition of it. So in order for there to be an additional unit, you have to have something to begin with.
Okay. I just
So
wanted to double check.
yeah, I think it's just a kind of an accounting thing. It's just a placeholder,
Okay.
more or less.
Wait, so you said it's marginal cost for 1 unit is 0, or 0 is 1?
At 1 it's 0 marginal.
1 is
So
0.
you don't take into account like going from 0 to 1, the change was
38 or
38, right? Because that's what I thought.
Yeah, it's not technically 0. They just don't include it.
It just doesn't have
So you just do 0.
Yeah, it's not even like a 0. Like on the form, it will just have like a dash, or they won't put anything in that cell. So just for the first unit, don't worry about it because it would require information that you don't really have. So you're fine.
Okay.
You guys cool? All right. Now let's get into these same concepts, but let's throw some graphs at it. Okay. Okay, let's do number 8. So refer to the above diagram. So this one right here. Okay. The firm's average fixed costs are what? What's the answer, y'all?
C.
C. Yeah, why is that? Can you guys explain that to me?
Because what we explained up there.
Huh?
Yeah, it's the total cost.
Right.
Variable cost.
Right, so this gap between the average total cost and the average variable cost, it has to be the fixed cost, right? Because we know that average total cost is equal to average fixed cost plus average variable cost. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody in the last review session actually had a really good question. They said, why, if it's fixed, is that distance between the two curves not always the same amount? Anybody answer that for me?
Because it's the average, so it's going to decrease.
It's going to change.
Right, because it's the average, right? So it's divided by quantity. So as that fixed cost gets divided by a bigger number, it actually gets smaller so that gap closes. Does that make sense? Okay. Cool. Okay, now we're on fire. Okay. Let's do 10. Okay. So the figure below depicts the cost structure of a firm in a competitive market. Okay, I want to touch on something real quick. This is another thing that should really help, hopefully. So in a perfectly competitive market, you guys are going to notice that there's a couple of things that are seemingly missing, okay? Because let's scroll down here. So look at these curves here, and then let's scroll down here. Notice that there's a few more, right? There's 3 curves up here, down here, got 4. Why is that? What's going on there? Well, actually,
Because the cost.
yeah, the different markets also, I kind of made a mistake. So this one also just doesn't show variable costs because if there was that one, this one would actually have 5. So,
Wait, what?
so this graph up here, it shows variable costs. Right there, see the U-shaped one underneath the total cost. This one doesn't show variable cost. So this one actually, if it showed variable cost, it would have another one, so it'd be 5. So there's actually 2 more curves on this graph. Why is that? Anybody tell me?
Because the marginal curve is or the marginal cost is the supply curve.
That's a good thought. It's a good thought, but actually no. That's true in a monopoly, but it's not the actual reason why. Because there are, in a pure competition, there are 3 things that are all exactly the same thing. And it is price, demand, and marginal revenue.
Oh, because they're price takers.
Right. Right. And because demand in this market is perfectly elastic, right? Do you guys remember, let's actually touch on elasticity real quick. Do you guys remember, what does a perfectly elastic market demand curve look like?
Like an E.
Boom. Yay. Yay. And then what about inelastic? What does it look like?
Vertical.
Yeah. So in a perfectly competitive market, the demand curve and the marginal revenue are both equal to the price. Okay? So when we're looking at this, and you're saying, okay, well, where's the demand curve? Where's the marginal revenue curve? Well, they're both at whatever price it's at. So look at this question. When market price is P1, a profit maximizing firm's total revenue can be represented by the what? So then what would we do here? Guys need a little bit more? Yeah.
So just at P1, you go over to where it crosses the marginal cost curve, and then go down to quantity 2, and
Right.
you multiply.
Right. That's perfect. So why did you do that? Why did you choose to go over to the marginal cost curve?
Because that's the rule.
That's the rule.
Maximizing profit or something like that?
Yeah, profit maximizing rule. Okay. Let's hit that. Slash loss minimizing rule. What is it? What is this equation? You guys remember?
Mine equals M and C.
Good job. Please hammer that one into your head. Okay? Everybody write it down, circle it, underline it, because outside of that chart, this is probably going to be the most useful thing on the exam.
Does that apply to all 4 types of markets?
Yeah, it does.
And then the marginal revenue is the same as the price, correct?
Yeah, just with pure competition, it still applies, but you probably won't see a marginal revenue. You'll just have to remember that marginal revenue in perfect competition is price. I'm going to write that right. I'm going to write that on our...
Is that just in competitive markets?
Just purely competitive.
Just purely competitive is
Yeah.
price. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to write that here. So the reason why you guys really need to remember this rule is because you're going to use it on a lot of graphical problems and even tabular problems, ones that are just tables. Why is that? Why are we always looking for profit maximizing output? Or why would firms want to operate their profit maximizing output? That sounds really obvious, but why?
Game maximum
So
profit.
they're not losing
They're making the
money.
most money or they're losing the least money, right? It's pretty simple. So every time you look at one of these graphs, and it says, if market price is P1, a profit maximizing firm's total revenue can be represented by what? So, all right, this is our price, but it's also our marginal revenue, right? So if you were a firm in this market, you want to operate at this point because that is where your profit is going to be maximized, or your loss is going to be minimized. Does that make sense? And then another good thing to review real quick. What is profit? What's the good way to remember profit as?
Revenue minus cost.
Revenue minus cost. Good job. Okay. So, profit is our revenue minus costs, right? So revenue, what is revenue?
How much money you bring in?
Right, it's how much money you bring in. How can you calculate it?
Just quantity times price.
Right, exactly. All you're doing is, all right, if I sell t-shirts and I sell 50 today and each of them costs $10, how much money did I make?
Sorry, what were the
50 and 10. $500, right? I made $500. I sold 50 t-shirts. Each one of them got me $10. That's it. And then your profit is just, all right, I made $500 today, but it cost me blank to pay employees, this much to buy the t-shirts that I sold. So let's say after all that, it's like $300. So I had $300 worth of costs out of my revenue, $300 was cost, $200 was profit. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. So what's the answer to this question? I think somebody already answered it, but let's just go over it one more time so I'm sure nobody got lost. You guys got it? Okay, cool. If you want to just do me a big favor, give me just like a head nod or something. If you're good, okay, that'd be great. So otherwise I just stand here and I feel stupid. Okay, when market price is P4, okay, a profit maximizing firm's total cost can be represented by the area what? Okay, so now we're not looking for revenue, we're looking for costs, okay? But you're going to start this problem the same way you start all the other ones. With this, okay? So who can walk me through this one? Anyone want to volunteer?
Are we on 11?
We're on 11, yeah. Sure. I should probably be saying the numbers out loud. If I do that again, and I move on to a question, I don't say the number, will somebody call me out on it? Because otherwise people in the video are going to have no idea what the freak I'm talking about. Okay.
So is it B where you go from Q4 all you go to the intersection of marginal cost down to Q4?
So did you say B?
B, yeah.
Okay. So let's take a look at it. So it's P4, right?
Yeah.
So I'm assuming what you did is you came up here and you went over to the marginal cost curve, right?
Right.
Then you went here. So then this area here, what does that represent? Your revenue. Your revenue. So you had a really good thought, but you're looking for what? Total cost, right? So it's going to be part of that square, but it's not going to be the whole thing. How do we know what part it's going to be?
Go to the total cost.
Right, the total cost curve. So it's going to be, you're like, okay, this is our quantity, right? So then if we come down here to total cost and we go straight over, then this bottom square right here is our cost. Does that make sense? And then just out of curiosity, what is this top little rectangle here? Profit. So the correct answer is actually C. It's kind of hard because these two are like right next to each other, but it's C. Does that make sense to everybody, or do you guys want me to draw that out? Do it again.
So I guess real quick, why would that not be? Why would it be Q1 then? Like P4 to Q1?
P4 to Q1?
Yeah.
Good question. Because you did it right the first time because you were looking for what? The profit maximizing.
Yeah.
So you always use that. Always use MR equals MC. So you know that if prices are set at P4, then that's your marginal revenue, right? That's going to be your line. So you follow that line all the way over to where it reaches your MC, and now you know that that is where you're going to be producing. Okay, so along this line, this is the quantity you're going to produce.
That makes sense.
Okay. Just in case anybody is a little more visual and they want to see it a little bit better. Erase this. So this is over here too, just so you know. Just not as dramatic. Draw this a little higher. Marginal cost going up. Okay. That's all we need for this one. Yeah. So then we've got Okay, so if prices are set at P2, then how do we find, what output will we have for this one? Q2. Why is that?
Because it's where it intercepted the marginal cost.
Right, because you know if prices are set at P2, then that is equal to our marginal revenue, right? So you find where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, right there, and that's going to be your output. And then, how do we calculate our, that over, and I'm going to renumber these real quick. I still want to. Okay. So now, if, let's say, what is our profit at P4? How would you find that? Go for it.
You go to the MC, then you go down to quantity of 2. Well, you start at P4.
Right.
And then you go over to the MC.
Right.
Then you notice that it's right there to the quantity of 4.
Uh-huh.
Then it's going to be the difference between average total cost and marginal cost, right? That's the profit.
Right. So let's say that at P4, okay? So like he said, you come over here, you find out where price, because that's equal to our marginal revenue, right? It's equal to our marginal cost, and then you come down and you'll see where this average total cost curve is, and then this whole rectangle right here would be profit. What would be our cost?
Below that.
The rectangle below it. Exactly. So that whole thing would be our cost. So that would be our profit, right? Okay, that would be our cost. And both the colored squares would be what?
Revenue.
Revenue. Good job, guys. Yeah.
And how would we calculate P3 when it doesn't intersect with marginal cost? Do we just assume that it will intersect with marginal
Yeah,
cost?
I should have drawn that out
Well, it's
more.
not drawn on the graph on the slide, so
Yeah.
just always assume that it's going to.
Yeah, you would have to, if they asked you to calculate P3, it would give you a point where they intersect. But that actually does bring up an interesting example. Go for it.
Just wouldn't that mean that the firm would want to shut down though?
Huh?
If it was like at P3 all the way over.
Okay, let's go over that right now. That's a really good question. That's actually what I was about to get into. So, over here, don't forget that this rule is not just called the profit maximizing rule, right? What else is it called?
Lost
No. Loss minimizing, right? Shutdown rule is a different rule. We'll go over that right now. So in this case, we've got, this is a profit, right? Okay, so let's do a loss minimizing example. I'm going to say that the price was P4, be really clear. Okay. So let's do one where this would be a loss minimizing. Okay, so now we've got average total cost, we've got marginal cost, and let's say that we've got a price that's right here. One. Okay, let's look at this now. How would you find your revenue here? P1 times Q1, right? Now, you're not making a profit here, right? You're not going to make a profit here. Why are you not going to make a profit?
Because you're below the average total cost.
Exactly. You're below the average total cost. So then how do we figure out how much money we're losing in this scenario?
Find the difference between where.
Exactly. So you would go up to your average total cost curve, and you would go over. Okay? So then, sorry, I'm going to reiterate. This is at P1. So you would go up to your average total cost curve and go over. and then this area would represent your loss, right? Now, should you always shut down if you're losing money? No, you shouldn't. That might sound really weird, but let me explain it to you with an example, and then I'll show it to you on a graph, okay? So imagine you're running a restaurant, and it's going to cost you, your fixed costs for that day are $300, okay? And your variable costs, yeah, we'll get into that right now. But let's say that so no matter what, if you shut down, you're going to lose $300. So then, if you're selling and you're making $200 in that day, should you shut down? No, you're still losing $100 a day, right? But you should still be operating because you're only losing $100 versus the $300 that you would be losing if you would shut down completely. Does that make sense? Did I lose everybody? Okay. So, the case in which you do want to shut down is when your price is less than your average variable cost. Why is that? Can anybody explain to me? Go.
Because you're losing money on each unit sold.
Right. So your shutdown rule is if your price is lower than your average variable cost, so average variable cost always looks kind of like this. So if your price is lower than your average variable cost, it means that you're going to be losing money on each additional unit that you sell, right? Because it's costing you more. Think about it this way. It's costing you more to produce that unit than you're getting from selling the unit. So then the more you sell, the more money you're losing, right? So in this scenario here, you're actually losing less money. This is a loss minimizing, right? But you could also imagine a scenario like this, where cost, variable cost, and let's say your price is here. What happened in this one? Shut down, right? And if you shut down, so right here you guys calculated the loss, right? It was just this number right here, this area. How would you calculate the loss in this one?
Go up to the top curve, the total loss.
Gotcha. You're close. It would actually just be your fixed cost. Because think about it, you're not producing anything, right? So you're not producing, so there's not going to be a square because there's no quantity. So it's just whatever your fixed cost is, that's what you're going to lose if you're shut down.
Or if you're shut down.
Yeah, you're shut down. Because in this scenario, you would shut down, right? Sorry, I probably jumped
I thought
ahead.
it was still going.
My bad. That was my fault. So, in this one, you would shut down, right?
Yeah.
Because your price is lower than your average variable cost. So if you produce or if you sell, you're going to lose money on every unit you sell, so it doesn't make sense for you to sell. You might as well cut your losses, just shut down, and not sell anything, because then you just have to pay your fixed cost. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Any heartburn on this?
Would it be,
Always, yeah.
would it,
I'll go you, then you. Is that okay?
would it be less than or equal to? Like when price is less than or equal to average variable cost, just because you're still losing the fixed cost amount, so when you want to shut down?
At that amount, yeah, it would just be up to you, pretty much. You know what I mean? Because you're going to lose the same amount no matter what. Because if it's equal to it, then with each unit, you're not making money, but you're also not losing money.
Yeah.
So it's just like, all right, do you want to work or no? So,
Okay.
Depends. Just a judgment call. Okay. Any other questions on these concepts? Are you guys okay with this?
So,
Yeah.
if they shut down, you say they have to pay the fixed cost. That would be something like rent, right?
Right.
They would have to maybe go get another job and just keep paying that rent off.
Right.
Something
Which, I
like
mean, getting the other job is beyond the purview of the class. You don't have to worry about how they're paying it.
Yeah.
But you just have to know that they are
that.
going
They
to
would
have to pay it.
that.
They're going to have to pay it no matter what. Right. Okay. Any other questions? If you guys can do this and then also do the tab, the table that we did at the top, you'll do pretty well. If you understood everything here, you should be just fine. Okay. So just remember the marginal revenue equals marginal cost rule. That'll be very, very beneficial. It's going to repeat itself a lot of times. Okay, I'll step out of the way in case any of you guys want to take a picture of this, and I'll label this one shut down here. So then you guys want to picture that again. So that will be very beneficial. Let's see, what else do we want to go over? Okay, let's do a couple more things. Everybody good at that? Okay. Let's do these. So there's a bunch of questions on this one. They're pretty much just asking. Huh?
What questions were on the video?
Oh, thank you, man. I appreciate it. So this is figure 2, and it's 16 through 21, I believe. They just asked questions concerning this graph. So what we're going to do real quick is we're just going to label all these curves. All right. So who can tell me what is curve C? So just so you guys know, this is monopoly. This is for a monopoly. What is curve C? It's a straight line. Marginal cost. Good job. Something that's good to know, but I don't think you'll be required to know. What is marginal cost equal to in monopoly? Supply. So it's the same thing as supply. Okay, now what is curve D, this U-shaped one? Anybody tell me? Good job. So this will be your average total cost. Good job. Average total cost is always the U-shaped one, okay? If there's 2 U-shaped ones, it's the bigger U-shaped one. Does that make sense? Because you look over here, does that make sense why that is? Because your total cost is always going to be greater than your variable cost because variable cost is part of the total cost. Yeah.
So will you always have an average total cost curve no matter what if you don't have a
variable cost curve? Yeah. The vast majority of the time. If there's only one, it's the total cost curve. I don't know why they would just give you a variable cost curve. So, but if there's 2, know that it's the larger of the 2. Okay? All right, curve A and curve B, what are those 2?
One's a demand.
Marginal revenue.
Right. Which one's demand and which one's marginal revenue? Right. This is marginal revenue. This is demand. So, easy way to remember that: demand is always bigger than marginal revenue. Okay. Demand is always going to be bigger than marginal revenue. So now that we've got all those labeled, let's do an example on this chart. Okay. So, if price was at, I guess it's going to be a good one. I think there's actually one example. I don't want to make one up in my head. Screw you guys up real hard. Okay, so let's do this one. If the monopoly firm is producing at Q3 units of output, then a decrease in output will necessarily cause profit to what? Okay, so let's do that again. So they're producing at Q3, okay? So if they're producing at Q3, decreasing their output will increase profit if what?
Q2.
Huh?
If they go to Q2.
Right, as long as they don't go past Q2. Why is that? What's so important about Q2?
That's the profit maximization rule.
Profit maximization rule. The same, I'm telling you, you guys are going to use it on almost every single one of these. So, if they're producing at Q3, you can see over here that the marginal revenue and the marginal costs are intersecting, right? So they're not going to be maximizing their profit or minimizing their loss. So they want to move over to the point where marginal cost curve C and marginal revenue curve B intersect because that's the part where they're going to maximize their profit. In this case, would it be maximizing profit or minimizing loss?
Maximizing profit.
It would be maximizing profit. Because it's above the average total cost curve.
Oh yeah.
See that? Yeah, so when you're looking at either profit or loss, always look at total cost, okay? And if you're looking at shutdown, it's variable cost. So if you're looking to see if they're making a profit or a loss, just look to see, all right, is the intersection point between profit and marginal revenue and marginal cost above the total cost curve, or is it below? It's above profit, it's below loss.
So if they're producing at Q0, right, which is like barely below, the average total cost, then it would be loss minimizing. Q0.
Yeah, well, it would be more if, so if this x was down here, then yeah.
Oh, okay. It has to be the.
Because the rule is where they intersect, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it's where that x is.
Okay.
Because if not, like you were saying, if they were at Q0, then they would want to just move over here, right? It wouldn't have anything to do with, because they're not maximizing their profit anyway.
Yeah.
So you want to get to that point, and then once you're at that point, if you're above, you're making a profit. If you're below, you're not making a profit. You're incurring a loss.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So.
Does that mean it's C?
Huh?
Does that mean I can C?
It is indeed. Good job. Okay. So a couple other things I want to review with you guys before we let you go. Who can explain to me economic versus accounting profit?
Economic problem has to do with implicit.
One contains implicit
What was that?
cost.
Accounting where there's just revenue minus the expenses. And then the economic ones minus the implicit and explicit costs.
That's right. That's right. Who can explain to me what implicit and explicit mean?
Implicit is everything that's basically on paper.
Right.
And implicit is what you are losing or could have gained by
Right. Right. So your explicit costs,
opportunity costs.
boom, that's a really good word. Costs are what you can just think of as your normal costs, right? These are just the total costs of running, right? So, and then your implicit costs would be your opportunity cost, okay? All right. So, to explain this kind of simply, let's say, for me, so we'll use a personal example, all right? I'm trying to decide whether or not I'm going to be a TA next semester. And my alternative is, if I'm not a TA, I'm going to take an additional class, okay? So if we're looking at the costs, looking at the costs, right? My explicit costs for that decision, right, would be I'd have to pay tuition and books for an additional class. So it would just be the combined price of tuition and books. That would be my explicit cost. Right? What would be my implicit cost?
What you're not
How
making.
many you won't be making?
Right. If I choose not to be a TA, then I would lose. My implicit cost would be all my wages, yeah.
Like $15 a month.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty much. I would lose like 3 whole packets of ramen a month. So, does that make sense between implicit and explicit costs? Okay. So then when you're looking at profit, economic profit is your revenue minus your implicit and explicit costs. So if this is your revenue, then it would be, all right, here's your implicit, here's your explicit. Then this would be your economic profit. Does that make sense? Okay, and then accounting, here. Drawings are going to get sloppy. Accounting profit or normal profit accounting or normal profit is what?
Just the explicit.
Just explicit cost, right? Explicit costs, and then that would be your accounting profit right there. So that's just revenue minus explicit. Okay, any heartburn on that one? Are you guys okay with this? Okay. So, a couple other things with economic and accounting profit. So, we were talking about profit with reference to these graphs, right? We've got average total cost, marginal cost, and then we've got price, right? So say that our price is here, and this is a perfectly competitive market. Then how do we find our profit? Right. We go down to the average total cost curve, and that's where we get our profit. Would that be an economic profit or just an accounting profit?
Accounting.
It's actually economic. It's both. It's both. Okay, because if you think about, you'll only see that will be your economic profit. There will only be an accounting profit if price is right here, where it's equal to the average total cost curve. Okay, if the intersection is right on the average total cost curve. So, to give you guys another example, I'll erase that. So say this is a monopoly now. And marginal revenue, just pretend that that's all 1 point. That would be just an accounting profit. Does that make sense as to why? Can anybody explain why that would be?
Because the price is exactly at the intersecting point of marginal revenue and marginal cost.
Right. So these people would be making a normal profit, but it wouldn't be profitable for anybody else to enter that industry because it doesn't cover their opportunity cost. It would be a wash. Does that make sense? So something that would be good to know, that I'll just write down. I don't know if I should put this in the blue section or not, but monopolies can incur an economic profit long term. Purely competitive will only have an accounting profit. Can somebody explain that to me?
In the long run or in general?
In the long run. In the long run. Thank you for stipulating that. That's important.
Isn't that part of like the barriers to entry? How a monopoly can limit who enters, whereas pure competition, people can always lower or like come in whenever they want.
Exactly. You're 100% right. So think about that. If you know you're going to make an economic profit, it means that your profit is going to be greater than your opportunity cost. So what you're sacrificing, let's say it's to start, pick a business, summer sales business or something here in Utah. I mean, we're in Utah County, why not? So let's say that I want to start my own summer sales company. If I see that the economic profit, that the benefit I'll get out of that is greater than my benefit of going to school or having a normal job, then I'll leave. But then a bunch of other people are going to see that too. And because anybody could do it, there's no barriers to entry, you would just all of a sudden go until the market got saturated and the economic profit would drop. Does that make sense? Because there's all of a sudden you've got a bunch of competitors. And sometimes it will even drop below. But then what happens, people will exit the market because they're like, okay, well now I could be making more doing something else. So in a competitive market where there's no barriers to entry, it'll always end up right there where you're just making an accounting profit. But in a monopoly where it's really hard for people to come into the industry, you can make an economic profit in the long term because who's going to come in and compete with you, right? Does that make sense?
So pure comp can't have an economic profit in the long run.
In the long run, no.
Okay.
What about like an oligopoly?
Oligopoly, I think technically they can, but what you would expect to see, and with monopolistic competition as well, what you expect to see is you expect to see it to shrink over time.
Just a discount. Like,
Yeah. So, I'm not 100% sure on that, but I know that this would be the thing you should know for sure. Okay?
Is that because monopolies can charge, so since they control prices, no other competition is controlling their prices or making them go down, so their opportunity cost is just so great. Is that
Right.
okay.
Right. Yeah, you're spot on with that one. Okay. Are there any other questions?
Not a question, but we might, the percentage change formula.
Okay,
Can you
USSD.
expound that a bit?
Yeah, let's say USSD real quick. So when I took this class, the TAs told me I didn't need to know the formula for USSD for the final. They were wrong. So I'm not going to make that same mistake. So just be familiar with the formula for USSD. Most of you guys probably at least somewhat remember it. But just, oh my gosh, I wrote it wrong too. Apparently I don't remember it. So it's just percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in price, okay? So at the next review session, what I'm expecting us to do is we're probably going to go through this list of topics here. And we're going to hit some of the stuff, okay, that you might see from the first section of the test. So the test will be majority on the stuff that we've covered today. So chapters 9, 10, 12, 13, and 14, that will be the bulk of the test. I'd probably say 60%. And then 40% of the test will be review stuff from the first two exams. It won't be as deep, but it'll be good just to review it, to refresh it. So I'm imagining Tuesday we'll spend a lot of time on demand, supply, market equilibrium, and then we'll also go over elasticity a little bit. Yeah.
What is the percentage change formulas? I think it's like
Oh.
Q1 plus Q2 over Q1 plus Q2 over Q2.
Yeah, so percentage change, right? So it's just, you're going to be looking at, so if it was quantity, if you had like, all right, Q1 was 60 and Q2 was 70, then what you would look at is, okay, so this is our change, right? So you take your net change, which would be 10, and then you would divide that by the average. So it'd be 65. So if you write that out longhand, algebraically it'd be Q2 minus Q1 divided by, I like to do 1/2, but that's just me. You could also do divided by 2. So it would be 1/2 Q2 plus Q1. But we'll go over that more in detail next time. Any other questions on the stuff that we covered today? Or are you guys okay? We've got a few more minutes, so you can do whatever you want. If you'd like to stay after and talk to me, feel free. If not, you're good to go. We'll cover the rest of the stuff on Tuesday. I hope this helps. Good luck, you guys.
Thanks, Brandon.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
He